Paul's jumping off the ship. Well, I guess more into maybe a...
I'm jumping into a different ship.
Yeah, tin can of
Yes. Right.
aeronautical variety.
Bobbing in the ocean violently. What the hell are we talking about?
We're just jumping right into the meat of you.
The meat of me. A new Teams feature coming in 2022.
It is 2022.
Yeah, so I'm going to Mexico on Thursday, hopefully. So far, so good. But, travel being what it is. For whatever it's worth, my son and his cousin flew to Colorado from, I guess, Philly through Dallas over the holidays and had no problems whatsoever. You've heard about all these flight delays and cancellations and things, which, whatever. I mean, as I said to my sister, I think on New Year's Eve, I'm like, do you ever question your ability as a parent that you would send a child around the country during a pandemic and amidst thousands of flight cancellations? She was like, no, not really.
Yeah, your kids are old. I mean, it'd be one thing if your kid was like 9 and you're like, you know what?
No,
good luck. Like FedEx will treat you well.
We were sending them to be in the care of my father, who was, not the most responsible of adults. I guess is the way I'd say. Anyway, so assuming nothing goes bad or wrong or south or whatever, we'll be flying on Friday. So
flying on Friday or Thursday?
Sorry, Thursday. You're right. And
if you're flying Friday, it's because you missed
Friday. I'm like, what do you mean there's no plane? Yeah, so we should be good for Friday. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well, you enjoy that. One thing we might be able to enjoy maybe as early as tomorrow. Looks like there might be a matte black Surface Go 3 coming.
A matte black Surface Go 3.
Wow.
Well, that's going to change everything for that little guy, huh?
It will.
It'll make it faster or something. It'll shine. It's matte black though, so it's not like it's.
Yeah, so it's mattier. I don't know whatever that means.
Yeah.
But that might be arriving as early as tomorrow. So.
Okay. So that kind of matches like the Surface Pro. Right?
Yeah,
Surface
that's
Pro is also silver and.
Yeah, black. I don't know why they would reinvent some new color of black.
Yeah.
For
right. Well, I mean, in other words, it matches the fact that Surface Pro offers the two colors as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if Microsoft can make these in any volume, they should offer a bunch of fun colors,
Yeah.
I guess you could buy. They must have D-brand skins and whatnot you could do if you're.
They should have a Surface Go design lab.
Wow. Yeah. I think they sell more controllers than they sell Surface Go's.
Yeah, and I think the controllers are probably a little bit easier to. I mean, they're just plastic shells. You just.
Yep. Well, maybe they should. What was that? The little cheap thing, the Surface Laptop SE, is cheap and made of plastic. They could throw some colors in there.
Yeah, make them like the old Apple books or whatever those things were called back in the day. Or iMacs, the first gen. Or
iBooks.
iBooks. There it is.
iBook. Yeah, the iBook, the toilet seat iBook, which came in different colors. Yeah.
That's how would I learn to code program? I think it's C++ on.
Yeesh, really?
I think.
Man, that was an ugly little computer.
Yeah,
I think everyone was taken with the original iMac when it first came out, and they did a pretty good job updating it with colors over the years. Although, like right at the start of the transition to LCD displays, this giant CRT thing, there was something really horribly wrong with the iBook. Like it's just the second you saw it, you could tell they were trying to ape the design of the iMac, but it was like maybe not so much. And then 2001, they switched to the like a plastic, but polycarbonate kind of squared off white version, which actually I bought. I bought it to run the first version of Mac OS X. It was kind of a nice little computer, for what it was. Back in the day, the G3 or whatever it was.
I think that's
G4.
what it was.
Maybe that one might have been the G4 actually. I think the G3 was the first one, and then the little white one was the G4, maybe.
Yeah, the one I had was teal. It wasn't mine. That was
like
the class that I was in, or the independent study, I should say, that I took in high school.
Teal was kind of the classic color, I would say, for those translucency.
Well, apparently, if we wait a few more weeks or whatever months, I'll be able to buy another one in teal, because it sounds like that's probably what they're doing with their.
By the way, those look beautiful. The MacBook Air, I mean, like if that's what that thing looks like, that's gorgeous, and it's so smart. That's such a, younger people especially going to eat those things up. Like it's just so great. I just think it looks great.
Yeah, no, I think
assuming it's true.
they'll sell a bunch of them.
Yep.
Speaking of sales, Zynga got snapped up for a bunch of $1 billion by Take-Two. It was like 12 billion or something.
Oh boy. What did two turds make again, Brad? Help me with the math on this one. Bigger
Candy
turd.
Crush?
Candy Crush. Yes. That's good.
Yeah. We're now in the post CES world. So.
Yeah. Did we ever? I don't know if we ever really talked about CS.
We did.
From my perspective, just a bunch of PC releases. I'll just say, I wrote about this twice on the site. I mean, there is. We did talk about this part of it. There's some mystery around the processors that are going to be in these computers, right? Yep. And to the tune of, I got an HP to do an early look at, with the understanding that I shouldn't do benchmarks or any of that stuff. Which honestly, there was something holding it back. Regardless, the performance was pretty bad. A beautiful, computer, but it is, I think, unprecedented for this kind of thing to happen.
I think it's because they're jockeying, right?
Yeah,
Intel used to be able to Intel owned the narrative of like when they were going to release stuff and whatever, and then here comes AMD nipping at their heels, and then especially in the desktop space, surpassed them in some capacity, and so now all of a sudden they can't do it.
Look, they're probably both going to have some claim to fame. That Intel will be able to say, well, this thing over here does this that AMD can't touch, and AMD will say, well, this thing does this, and Intel can't touch that, and but instead of just throwing all their cards on the table, they've decided just to be really secretive about it, to the tune of forcing their PC maker partners not to discuss it. I did mention this, but I mean the spec sheet for the it's called the Elite Dragonfly G3, the HP computer, is very specific about every single display option you can get, the RAM allotments, the storage allotments, all the the options, and blah blah blah, and then it just says 12th gen Intel core processor
chip,
and it's shipped with like a 100, I think it was 110 or 115 watt power supply, which is very unusual especially in the ultrabook space. Anyway, big mystery, but we shall know soon. I mean, these things are all supposed to come out February, March, just like every year. So the mystery will be revealed.
Well,
such as it is. Yeah. Plus, what about all those Windows and ARM announcements? Whew, man, it's hard to even keep up with that.
There were so many, we should probably round them up.
To one. To an even one.
It's funny. Surface is turning 10 this year.
Surface is turning 10 this year.
Did the first one come out 2012?
Windows 8. Yeah. So yes. Yep. Yeah. The iPhone is turning 15 this year. In fact, arguably today or yesterday or something was the day they announced it. It didn't come out until June. But yeah, it's sure.
Maybe by year 20 they'll have ARM figured out.
I recommend holding your breath. And
that shade of blue U-turn, that is what they will use for the...
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, at some point it just becomes a non-starter. I don't know. I mean, as long as AMD and Intel keep fighting it out, at least there's competition there, improving that space at a pretty good clip. And so
I'm going to fall back on what I wrote when this platform was first announced, which was that if this thing works out, it will be boring, right? It's not going to be this thing that takes over the industry overnight and is the biggest thing in the world. It's just, you could go into a store, buy a computer, not think about it, and then when you get home, don't have a bad experience anywhere. Like, that's what makes it work. I don't think most typical consumers think too much about Intel or AMD, I guess, They might get like an upsell in a store, if there are still such places, where someone says, hey, this is an AMD processor, but honestly, it's much better than whatever Intel thing you get, less expensive, better power management, whatever it is. And people might fall for that or whatever, and it might be true. It doesn't matter. But, doing that to someone today with a Windows and ARM machine should be a punishable offense. You can't do that. And I think that's what they need. So will that happen? I mean, yeah, it probably should, but will it matter when it does? I don't know.
This is also a brilliant headline. I read most of the story and kind of looked at it this weekend, but the title is, The headline is an open source developer expressing regret for supporting Fortune 500 companies breaks 19,000 projects by corrupting his own NPM libraries.
I saw that
on GitHub.
This guy is disgruntled with the Fortune 500. That was his rationale.
This guy would have really loved Steve Ballmer in like the 2004 era, 2005. Like,
yes, the Linux is a cancer Steve Ballmer of that era. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's the. I mean, you gotta. If you're putting code out there for free, you can't be mad when the big dogs come and use it and monetize the hell out of it. I mean, that's.
On a related note, you just reminded me of this. This is a rejected headline. Probably, I was
probably.
Well, I might still use it. It's funny but stupid.
Story of our life.
Yeah, funny but stupid. Right. So right on the headstone. I've been redoing continuing or whatever you want to call it, the programming Windows series. So I was spending a lot of time like researching the early 2000s, and I went through all of my archives for the year 2000, and then all of the Microsoft Press Pass archives for the year 2000, which is brutal. And I moved on to 2001. And one of the stories I want to tell is how Bill Gates there are these two sides to Bill Gates as a technologist. There are many sides to Bill Gates, unfortunately, but as a technologist, a visionary for sure. Like one of the things that really stands out in his speeches of that era is how often he throws out what's going to happen. And you're like, Mike, that's exactly what happened. Like it's crazy. Microsoft didn't own any of it, but he correctly predicted the next 20 years pretty effectively. So that's very interesting. But the other side of it is like he also promises all this stuff that never happened. And I don't mean it as a visionary sense. I mean, they announced actual products that weren't what they were supposed to be. They did that all the time. And the one we all remember is Longhorn. But honestly, probably began in the 90s. But in the .NET era, there were a lot of promises that were never kept. So you have these two sides. And because it's so long, I've decided to split it into two different articles is the point. But the original article, the headline was 2001, A Gates Odyssey. You can see why that didn't pass them.
Yeah, yes. Be a good subhead, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. Pivotal year, though, Brad. Pivotal year.